Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Tuesday to you. Josh of Severe Weather. Thank you for joining me today. We continue to talk about an area in the Caribbean that is being monitored for tropical development and what is expected to be a busier than average November here in the Atlantic Basin, which should not be too much of a surprise for folks, considering how warm the waters have been this season with respect to average and the fact that we're heading towards a La Nina. So the next name on the list is Patty, and I do think this system has some potential to become a hurricane as it moves slowly across the Caribbean next week. The track today has shifted, and a lot of our guidance, instead of taking this across Hispaniola and out to sea, is now trending it towards the northwestern Caribbean or towards Cuba. But there's still quite a bit of uncertainty on how this will play out. So we're just going to talk about trends in this video. We're going to talk about what's changed, what is driving this, what could occur, and what we still don't know yet. And believe it or not, there still is the possibility of a weak system here that could also form near the islands here next week as well. So right now, we continue to have a medium chance of development over the next 7 days. That has not climbed due to the fact that the development on this continues to get pushed back in time. A few days ago, it looked like it could happen towards the end of this week. Now I'm thinking it's probably going to hold off until Sunday, Monday, or maybe even next Tuesday. But the area still is the same here. The southwestern Caribbean is where this storm is likely to develop, and there's a gradual development chance from that. We'll likely have a tropical depression, eventually a tropical storm, towards the weekend or beginning of next week as that drifts northward or northeastward. And that's really the only feature on the map that I'm super concerned with at this time. You can see just very broad circulation here, nothing organized at this point. There is a boundary that continues to stretch across this portion of the Atlantic with low pressure here, well to the southeast of Bermuda over here. This activity down here is not going to be a problem for us. You can see we have very dry air mass in place across this portion of the Atlantic, as you would expect this time of the year. But we also have very fast wind shear from west to east across this portion of the Caribbean, and that is keeping our system here at bay for the time being. Now, as we move this along towards this weekend, we are going to see that amount of wind shear move away and relax quite a bit, setting up a much more favorable spot for development. So right now, we don't have a trackable feature. We don't have anything that models can run on just yet. They're just kind of guessing still at where this will eventually form and where it could track. So there's going to be a few more days here before we have a better handle on this. You can see right now, though, very fast wind flow aloft out of the west-southwest across the northern Caribbean. You can also see at the lower levels, we have trade winds that are coming from east-northeast to west-southwest. So this dissonance here, this change in wind direction from the ground up is what's continuing to keep this at bay. But we are getting heavy rainfall across the eastern portion of Nicaragua, as well as across lower Panama and far western Colombia. So regardless of how quickly this comes together, you're going to be dealing with quite a bit of rain across Central America and also across the Cayman Islands and Belize and the Yucatan. So those taking a cruise this week, do prepare for wet weather. That's at the very least what I think will happen. This is the phase diagram for the Madden-Julian Oscillation. If you've come to me for the first time here, that is basically around the equator. We've got a pulse of rising air and thunderstorm development that crosses the globe from west to east. It takes 1 to 2 months to do so. And right now, that is favoring action across the Pacific. It is over the Western Pacific. But as we head into this direction and here, we are going to see more aggressive rising air across the Caribbean, across Africa, across Central America. And we're going to be heading into that phase where things will be a lot more favorable for lower wind shear and more storm development for the first 10 or 15 days or so of the month of November. So believe it or not, despite this quiet pattern we're in this week, it is going to be more active as we head into next week. Ocean water temperatures remain well above average across the central Atlantic, and they remain above average across the Caribbean Sea and over the southern Gulf of Mexico as well. Another thing we like to look at is the oceanic heat content. It's not just that we're above average, but how deep do those warm waters go? And you can see here the area where this system is expected to track is still very juicy and full of warm water. Water temperatures are 85 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite the fact that we're almost to the month of November, they remain supportive of a tropical system and even a hurricane. We have had hurricanes in the month of November before. They primarily exist in this region and here, and typically they don't hit the United States, but we have had some hit Florida, at least 4 of them. But generally speaking, this area needs to be watched the most for tropical development this time of the year. Here's a look at the latest ensemble guidance. This is the probability that something can pop up here within a 24-hour span. And right now, that chance is still pretty low. It does start to come up a little bit here north of Panama by the end of this week and into the weekend, but it's not a high chance just yet. As we move this along into next week, though, and the reason why chances are coming down is because as we go further into time, typically the skill in forecasting something goes down. We still have, you can see whatever's out there is trending to the northwest here. And the average of these ensembles now brings us into the Northwest Caribbean. Now, a few days ago, if I show this to you here, actually, we got to go past this, and I don't have that for you. But the trend was for more guidance showing something in here. Now we've seen that shift more into this direction here for the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Cuba, and maybe even the Yucatan Peninsula. So that's the European. Taking a look here at the official forecast from the European Meteorological Service, you can see, and let me move this back so that we can get to today, still a pretty good chance of something forming here over the next week. As we move into next week, that chance has climbed between Honduras and Jamaica, the Western Caribbean. The following week, we still have the chance for something, and this may be a separate system that follows potential patty here. But I want to take this back one and show you that chances have increased of the potential for something entering the southern and eastern Gulf of Mexico. Now, this does not mean we are forecasting something to hit Florida. It just means we need to keep monitoring at this point. And not just in Florida, but even Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even the southeast coast. It's not a high chance, but this is the possibility of something passing within a couple hundred miles of these areas. So 5, 10, 20% chance. Again, not a 0% chance, but we're not predicting something just yet. We aren't going to until we know where exactly this storm forms and what kind of time frame we're looking at. I'll snap. So let's take a look here at the ensembles. We'll start with the GFS. This is the earlier ones from today, and you can see pretty much no development between now and Friday, but we do have some lowering pressures by the time we get to this weekend here south of Jamaica. We also have some lowering pressures here along our front north of Puerto Rico where we may watch for a quick little storm to form. Now, we have more and more support today that this is going to try to turn off to the west, and don't get too fixated on this low. This is just an average of all the solutions, okay? And you can see there are solutions that are still off to the north and east of the Bahamas and some that go into the Yucatan. But the trend here has been to move this farther west with time. If we looked at this time yesterday, you can see that the average had this near Jamaica. Now, fast forward that here to today, and you can see the average now has it between Jamaica and Belize. So a shift to the west here on the average of our ensembles. As we take this off further into time, there's less and less support for something in the Gulf of Mexico. In fact, the GFS indicates that this may not even escape the Caribbean, or it may get stuck here or be around for several more days. So a lot of uncertainty here from this, but it's not the only model that shows that trend west. Here's a look at the European ensemble. And again, we have something south of Jamaica, but take a look at where the mean is going, northwest into the Northwest Caribbean. And as we get to the end of next week, we still may have something out here. There are some solutions that do come up into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, but many more that have this near the Yucatan or still stuck in the Western Caribbean. And if wind shear picks up, we may have something that just doesn't survive over time. Here's the Canadian model, and it is looking more like the European as well. You see a motion towards the northeast here early next week, and then a turn back to the west-northwest. And there are some stronger solutions here near the Cayman Islands, so keep an eye on things if you're heading in that direction. But you can see here that the Canadian takes the average of everything into the Southeast Gulf aimed at Florida. Now, this is the average. There are several solutions down in here. There are some up in here. We just don't know yet. So it's really way too, I need to eat. It's way too soon to make a call on this. We just have to monitor at this point. Here's a look at the GFS ensembles, and I'll show you some stronger solutions. And you can see here, yes, there is some support for a separate system here by the end of this weekend, but generally speaking, something tries to get forming here either Saturday or Sunday this upcoming weekend. As we move on into next week, we have quite a few different scenarios here, but The stronger solutions bring this closer to Cuba or towards the Northwest Caribbean. We do have some solutions that turn it to the right towards the Bahamas or even South Florida. We have some that go into the Yucatan, and we do have one stronger solution aimed at the Florida Panhandle, but that's just one. That's not all of them. So again, we don't want to freak out at this point. We just need to keep an eye on it. But yeah, there's not a lot of support for a northern Gulf Coast hit, and I think that's going to be tough to happen. South Florida, West Florida, maybe. But right now, let's just focus on the Caribbean: Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti, Turks and Caicos, Belize, and Mexico as the most likely spots. Because until this system forms, we just don't quite know. Now, what's changed from yesterday is it's really pretty simple. If you think about it, it's that the storm is taking longer to form. And as a result, we have an area of high pressure that has become more established. You can see that ridge of high pressure by the middle of next week is here, and whatever feature we have is down in here. Now, a few days ago, because this system was expected to form sooner, it was going to escape through this trough. That is no longer looking like it's going to happen, because what's happening is this ridge is shifting eastward. So that keeps our system from going in this direction and keep it stuck down in here. Now, we need to wait and see what happens with this ridge before we get too far carried away. You can see, yes, it eventually does weaken and shift back to the east, but it's possible it could rebuild as well. And we have a hot Veterans Day across the Gulf Coast region, but that's actually not a bad thing, because if we have high pressure here and we've got another ridge of high pressure in here, that's going to protect this portion of the Gulf and keep everything out in this direction. So again, we're looking off into the distance, so this is not a gimme at this point, but it's what we're watching. So here's the European ensembles. And again, we see much less showing a move to the northeast, much more showing a move to the northwest, or even to the west, or even getting stuck. And yeah, there's a couple of ensembles that are outliers here, but these are very weak. So those of you in Texas and Louisiana shouldn't panic about that. However, there are some stronger solutions down in here that I think we do need to watch in this part of Florida. Again, we just need to watch at this point. So that is a look at the ensembles. I'll show you the GFS from earlier. The new one's just trickling in, but this model has just done a poor job of guessing at where things are going to go. And you can see the GFS takes the system northeast towards the Dominican Republic and hits as a hurricane next Monday morning, and then turns that system back to the west towards the Bahamas, and it gets stuck down there, and eventually wind shear kills it. This would be better for Florida and Cuba and Jamaica, but worse, of course, for Hispaniola and the Bahamas. The new GFS is coming in now. I don't know if we have it all the way out there yet. We can check it again later in the video, but it doesn't even have a formed system by Saturday morning. So it did have one in the earlier run. Now it does not have that system formed just yet. So again, that slower development is something we need to watch, because what's going to happen is the longer it takes down in here, the more likely high pressure builds into this area and blocks it from going this direction. And as a result, it's mulling around quite a bit longer in this portion of the Caribbean. So we'll check back on the GFS later in this video, but I got to move on. The Canadian from earlier, oops, I just gave it away. It's kind of in line with the GFS, but turns that system back to the west over Jamaica. And then after it passes Jamaica, it strengthens it into a stronger system, probably a hurricane here towards the Caymans and towards the western tip of Cuba. I don't know if we have the latest GFS yet. Nope, not quite yet, but that's okay. The European does not have quick development at all, but it does have development. You can see it actually has a broad system here and maybe a tropical depression or storm north of Hispaniola by Sunday afternoon. Moving beyond that time frame, you can see the feature up here is going to go away, but this system here is moving more to the northwest than before. And you can see here, depending on where this front here winds up, it may continue to push in this direction and suppress whatever's down here and keep it south of this line. That's what we're rooting for. Of course, that can change. So rainfall, big deal here across the Caribbean. You can see from the earlier GFS, we have parts of Central America that will pick up 400 to 500 millimeters of rain. That's 15 to 20 inches. We also see that kind of rain potential over portions of Hispaniola, including Haiti, maybe over portions of Puerto Rico and over parts of Jamaica. Anywhere I circled here could see at least a foot or more of rain. So at least 250 millimeters or so of rain. And we don't know exactly who's going to get how much, but you can see this is going to be a very slow evolving system. With that MJO phase, we're going to see tons of rain here. In fact, this is going to be our wettest month of the year in portions of the Caribbean, the month of November. Because I know some of you in Jamaica were telling me beforehand that you were hoping for rain. Of course, we had Hurricane Beryl. Then we went through a drier period. Well, it looks like that moisture is coming back here this month. So be preparing for that, for the potential for flooding. I'll come back to the GFS again and see how it's doing, but I do want to talk about the Pacific in this video. A couple of disturbances we're watching in the Eastern Pacific that I'm not super worried about, but the system of note here is now a rapidly intensifying Category 4 typhoon, Kong-Rey. The Philippine name is Leon, and that is heading towards Cayman here in the Philippines, and looks like it's going to have a direct hit on Taiwan here in less than 48 hours as a very powerful typhoon. The eye is huge. You can see there's a little wind shear, but this storm has very, very quickly intensified, as you would expect with low wind shear in this part of the world. That would happen. And you can see here with that shift west, the storm is expected to affect China later on as well. The remains will recurve and go through Japan and then end up in the North Pacific here next week. And that could impact our weather in the United States here the following week. What happens is when these typhoons recurve, they add more energy into the jet stream and you have bigger dips and bigger ridges. And that leads to more extreme change in the weather. So something we have to watch here in the U.S. coming up. But I do want to show you that in just a little bit. Here's the Pacific. We have an upper level low over Hawaii, so we're getting some wet weather in Hawaii, but lots of wind shear in here. We're going to watch this area to see if it forms, but more likely this area could be a depression or storm passing south of Hawaii here towards the end of the week and into early next week. Now, here's a look at Kong-Rey. You can see that massive eye here. It's moving west-northwest, spinning up some really rough surf over the Philippines. And here is the latest infrared on it, and you can see doesn't have a tiny eye, but it has a pretty intense wind field. Wind speed up to 130 miles per hour. The pressure is down to 944. So this would be a strong Category 4, borderline Category 4 on the U.S. scale. Over here is Luzon in the Philippines. These are the Cayman Islands. This is Taiwan. And the track is expected to go over these islands towards Taiwan here in about 36 hours. So if you're a praying person, do pray for these folks. They've already been hit this season, and it's likely they're going to get hit hard again here. Here's where the models take it. Pretty good agreement, but we may have a brush with China as well. At that point, the storm should be quite a bit weaker. Let's look at the U.S. We have a threat for severe weather late tonight and into tomorrow and maybe Thursday as well, as we have a strong trough ejecting into the plains here. We're going to see some significant winter weather over the higher elevations here, and we are likely to see some severe weather across this portion of the country, and in particular tomorrow afternoon across Oklahoma, Kansas, and maybe into the western Ozarks. There will be a potential for some tornadoes. You can see there'll be high winds and a fire danger today. We also have winter storm warnings for parts of Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, freeze watches and warnings as well, all the way down into southern Arizona. So a pretty good cold system here, but it's almost November, so this is not unheard of. Here's the GFS from earlier. You can see the strong wind flow ahead of this system. It's going to be a very warm Wednesday across the Midwest, and in Texas and Louisiana, we may see some record highs. But this system on Thursday, Halloween, is going to bring a big drop in temperature and some snow into the Superior region, and even maybe some flakes falling around the Twin Cities. We'll have some gusty winds and some gustier showers moving through Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana, but the severe weather threat is primarily to your south here across the mid-Mississippi Valley. But when you get to the eastern United States here, heading into Friday, we lose a lot of the moisture and high-pressure winds out. We do have a big cool-down coming over the weekend, especially in the Northeast, Friday night and Saturday, but down south, not as big a cool-down. In fact, it'll stay pretty warm on the Gulf Coast region here. Definitely some active weather, though. A marginal risk here for severe weather, mainly after midnight tonight, from western Iowa down into western Oklahoma and northwest Texas. Primarily a wind threat, but we could have some hail as well. Tomorrow will be the day when we probably have watches and warnings for a bigger chunk of the central U.S., all the way down to the Metroplex, and for much of Oklahoma, western Arkansas, western Missouri, Kansas City area, Wichita, even all the way up to Omaha, which I know got cut off. The best chance for tornadoes will be later in the afternoon along the I-35 corridor, but perhaps all the way into the evening in Dallas-Fort Worth, Tulsa, Springfield, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Kansas City. A big-time wind event is possible here, and we also have the threat for some hail. And then Thursday, as this front gets sheared apart a little bit, the threat for widespread severe weather is lower, but we could have some across the Delta region into southeast Texas and into South Louisiana as well. Take a look at the NAM model. Let me pull up the 12Z for you all here, and you can see moisture return here. The Cape is climbing. but we don't yet have something to get storms going this afternoon. Now, later tonight, I think we will have a narrow area of storms that we need to watch, and tomorrow should be pretty active in the morning across Kansas and Oklahoma, and then by the afternoon, this is 6 o'clock Central Time or 7 o'clock Central, you can see where the area is probably going to focus for severe weather, kind of right in here. So I'm sure the storm chasers are itching to get back out and chase, but you can see there, pretty good storm fuel continuing into the evening, then it drops off, and then we get a kind of a resurgence of moisture here across Louisiana, southeast Texas, western Mississippi here Thursday afternoon. Here's what the radar may look like from the NAM model. You see the snow out west, big time snow here around Casper, Riverton, and in higher elevations. Storms will start to erupt here after midnight tonight. You can see this is not until about 5 or 6 in the morning, but tomorrow, more likely, we have one wave lifting out into Nebraska, and then we get a break and then additional thunderstorm development here, another wave of strong storms that extends down into Oklahoma towards the end of the afternoon into the evening. Then this line marches eastward, anywhere from Missouri down to North Texas around midnight, and just beyond midnight into the overnight hours has severe weather. So if you're in the Ozarks region, eastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas, North Texas, have a way of receiving warnings. It's been a while since we've had any kind of rain or weather, but this does pack some strength with it. So we need to be prepared here during the overnight hours tomorrow night for some severe weather. As we head to Thursday, rain goes over to snow in Minnesota, and in particular between Duluth and La Crosse here in Wisconsin. Could be a good thumping of some heavy wet snow, but for Halloween, we could still have snow for the trick-or-treaters out there across western upper Michigan, around Lake Superior, and then heading up into Canada as well. And we're going to have scattered showers and storms along a broken frontal line here from southern Indiana all the way down to southeastern Texas. There is a risk for some tornadoes here. It doesn't really happen tonight, despite what you see here. There is a cap in place, but tomorrow we do see a more enhanced risk for a few tornadoes across the I-35 corridor, basically Wichita down to just west of the OKC area here. And that continues at night into eastern Oklahoma, North Texas, southwestern Missouri, and western Arkansas, and then should drop off some as we get into the day on Thursday. Here's a look at where our severe storms may fire up here. Not much today, but look at Wednesday. Here's the zone to watch before early to mid-afternoon, and then here's the zone to watch in the afternoon, evening. Could be some rotating supercells here. And then Thursday morning, all the way across the Ozarks region as well. Here's a look at wind speeds, and you can see they are going to be cranking today in Kansas. Definitely strong winds across western and central Colorado and northern New Mexico. We continue to see winds picking up here tonight into tomorrow around the Great Lakes, gusts over 50 miles per hour. And then we should see less wind as we get to Thursday, but enough that could blow around some of those fall decorations on your front porch. Rain potential here. You can see the heaviest of rain is going to be primarily across the central plains, northern Kansas, southeast Nebraska into Iowa. We could see 2 to 3 inches, locally as much as 4 if you believe the NAM model. And that corridor sets up across Iowa, Wisconsin, and northwest Michigan. The rain is needed, but we may see quite a bit of it falling here in just a 24-hour stretch. And then finally, snow totals. The highest amounts will be across the Wasatch Range here. Parts of Wyoming could see 18 inches of fresh powder here between now and first part of tomorrow. As we head into tomorrow night, we could see a little bit of snow around the Denver area. And then our next wave gets going in Minnesota Thursday morning with the potential between Thursday morning and Thursday evening of 2 to 4 inches of fresh accumulation in the Lakes region of Minnesota and up into northwest Wisconsin and also into portions of Ontario. I promised you we'd go back and take a quick look at the GFS as it trickles in here. Don't know what we're going to see just yet, but here we go. And you can see development of a system north of Hispaniola. That is not the main one. And it is slower to develop the system here north of Columbia. It doesn't have it forming before Sunday. So again, some complicated stuff going on here with multiple features to watch. But again, I like to defer to the ensembles until we know any better. So we're watching those trends for you. And another video will come tomorrow afternoon as new data comes in and as we get closer to potential formation. Hope everybody has a wonderful Tuesday, and thank you so much for your time today. I want to give all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who gives me this assignment and this blessing to help everybody be prepared for the weather, to help give you guys no hype information, to help give y'all my take on the weather as somebody who's been doing this for over 20 years, but I can't do that without my Lord and Savior. Um, we were all put on earth and given our own gifts, right? Uh, everybody's got a gift. Some folks are athletics, some folks are nurturers, some folks are in medicine, some are first responders, others in science like me. But we can't do it if we weren't created. We could never do something like this. We couldn't even think about that. But the good news is that we don't have to stress about everything because the Lord has given us these gifts. But for those of us who do choose to believe in Jesus, we are also given many trials. James 1:2 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do." And those are harsh words coming from James, a servant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ. But what this says is, the Lord has given us everything we need, but we can't just stray away from him. We need to continue to go to him and ask, and we will receive in due time. Don't expect anything if you don't believe it can't happen. You've got to believe, you've got to persevere, and you have to understand that difficult times are coming. Yet the Lord is the one who saves us from that difficulty and gives us the ability to be eternally with Jesus in heaven when our time on earth is gone. And that is what I pray for you, is that you believe that. And if you do have a prayer request, please list it, and I will spend time in prayer for you. I hope you all have a great Tuesday, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.